in the next 5 to 10 years, are human beings and human careers really in trouble?
I think a definite yes. Right?
Okay.
In the next 10 years, most definitely. In the next 5 years, we'll get some really nice heavy shocks.
Or is it eventually going to get to a point that it will start doing its own research and coming up with its own deductions, and then we're really in trouble that it will leave us far behind?
I think it's already gone past that.
Are we headed in that direction that SkyNet will actually become live, or Ultron will try to exterminate humankind, or that the Matrix will actually plug us in? Is that a reality?
I think what we're going for is much more benign.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another captivating episode of In the Gap. Today we're diving into a topic that has captivated minds and sparked imaginations across the globe: the boundless potential of artificial intelligence and its profound impact on our lives. As we stand at the threshold of a new era where machines are not just tools, but partners in our journey, it's crucial to understand the implications, possibilities, and responsibilities that come with this transformation. And who better to guide us through the digital transformation than our esteemed guest, Mr. Adeel Hashmi, a visionary in AI research and application. Throughout his illustrious career, Adeel has been at the forefront of AI advancements, from developing groundbreaking algorithms to envisioning AI-driven futures that seemed like distant dreams not so long ago. His work, as you'll discover, goes beyond just code and computations. It's about how these innovations intersect with our lives, reshaping industries, augmenting human capabilities, and even challenging our understanding of consciousness. In this episode, we'll embark on a journey that takes us from the origins of AI to its modern-day marvels. We'll explore the ways AI is already woven into the fabric of our daily existence, from the recommendation systems that curate our entertainment to healthcare solutions that diagnose diseases with unprecedented accuracy. But it doesn't end there. The potential of AI is as limitless as our imagination. We'll discuss the promise and potential pitfalls of AI-driven automation, ethics in AI decision-making, and the ever-pressing question that could AI truly match or even surpass human intelligence? Now, why did I read all of this from a screen? The reason is that every word that I spoke from the beginning of this video up to this point was not written by a human being. This entire introduction that I read out was written by ChatGPT in under 60 seconds. This should give us an idea of how powerful and how pervasive artificial intelligence is increasingly becoming in human lives. And to be honest, it's daunting, it's a little scary, and as human beings, we've always been scared or apprehensive about technologies that we do not understand. The question of whether or not technology can actually outpace us or outsmart us has never been more pressing at any other point in human history than it is today. It's something that fascinates me a great deal, and I really want to understand where AI is at the moment, how it came to this point, and more importantly, where it's heading in the near future. Just before we head into the conversation, I'll ask all of our listeners, if you enjoy this content, please take a second out of your time to hit that subscribe button. Also, give us a like, give us a shout out in the comments, share this with your family or your friends or any other person who you think might be interested in conversations such as these. If you engage with our videos, if you share it and you subscribe to it or you like it, it will help the algorithm, which again is an artificial intelligence algorithm, to propagate this video and this content to other like-minded people. So without further ado, our guest today is Mr. Adeel Hashmi. So just to give a small introduction on who Adeel Hashmi is, he is a AI enthusiast. He is working very closely with large amounts of data. He is a data scientist by profession. He has worked with a number of reputable companies over his illustrious career, including ICI back in Pakistan, and almost a decade he has spent with IBM in Australia. And he is now currently working with the Coles Group as a senior data scientist and helps them derive their data-based strategy. Adeel bhai, thank you so much for joining us and being on the podcast with us.
Thanks, Hussain. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an honor to talk to you. I've been looking forward to having this conversation for a while, and this domain of artificial intelligence is something that really fascinates me. And there are a lot of very very ethical, very philosophical questions that get raised with AI that has never happened with technology in the past. Before we get into that, I would want to. The format of our show is that we try to understand the person along with their profession as well. So we would also want to try and understand who you are as a person, how you got to this point, and what has led you to working with AI and large amounts of data. So first off, I would want to understand what your background is. Where are you originally from? What your childhood and early life was like up to your graduation before you came to Australia?
Sure. So early life, I'm from Karachi. So born and bred there till the age of 36 when I migrated here. I went for schooling in St. Patrick's in Karachi. I did my O levels, A levels.
Yep.
So all computer science related topics and electronics and this, whatever I could find in the courses I took up. And for university, I did from Ghulam Isa Khan. That I got into electronics, which was my dad's favorite. Mine was computer science.
Okay.
But I snuck across the faculty and I did most of the computer science courses.
Yes.
So I sort of have a double bachelor's from GK in that sense. Then from GK, I went on to do a bit of graphics work before actually starting my work at ICI. So I was at 2 months, 3 months, built some game development for this company called Arena Multimedia. I don't know if they still exist.
Okay.
And then I moved on to ICI. I spent about 7.5 years there. I started as an intern and I got up to the position of IT manager in about 5 years' time. And then then I went on to work with IBM about 7 years in Pakistan, and then transferred across here for another 4 years.
Does IBM have its own direct presence in Pakistan?
Yeah.
It does.
That's full-fledged presence.
Okay.
Obviously, people can argue that is the R&D division for IBM over there or not. So yes, R&D is not there.
Yeah.
They don't do any research development labs over
Yeah.
there. It's a big company. It's based out of the US mostly.
Yes.
So they do have labs across the world, but yes, Pakistan doesn't have such labs. But the presence as far as sales and other departments is concerned is completely there. So yeah.
What kind of work were you doing with IBM in Pakistan?
So that basically goes a bit from the Dulex ICI side. So when I joined ICI, they basically had SAP nobody knew about. That software that they do for enterprise resource planning. That's what SAP is. It's supposed to take over pretty much your entire organization. Yeah, you do your finance, you do your HR, all through that one system. So nobody's operating their own Excel sheets and just trying to marry them afterwards. It's just one system. So your salary is also passing through there. Your sales is passing. Your market, everything is going through that one system. Even your chart of accounts, everything is inside that. So ICI was installing that back in 2001 when I joined them.
Yep.
And this was basically when my interview was being conducted, and this is a pretty interesting story that nobody knew what SAP was. Even I think the manager there did not have much of an idea. And I don't think he even knows today how I actually figured the answer to his question. That he came and he left the room initially. He said, "I'll be right back." And I was just looking at the wall, and there were this strange little thing, books lying there, and they had this abbreviation systems, applications, and protocols or something, whatever.
Yeah.
And might be something. So the first question he came and asked is, "Do you know what SAP stands for?"
Yeah.
And I read, I gave him the answer, and I got hired because I was the only one who could answer that question. But basically, from there, it actually started off in SAP, and within SAP, I learned a lot from the implementation that was going on. And from the implementation, obviously, it was a very niche field because nobody understood or knew that area. So only Siemens was doing it in Pakistan. They had a monopoly. Today, there are maybe 7 players, 8 players who are installing it.
Yep.
So massive salary boosts.
Yeah, of course.
You get promotions and all that stuff. And based on that, IBM then hired. Then IBM actually had global projects for SAP. So not just in Pakistan. So like Shell, for example, British American Tobacco and all that. They are international projects. So based in Pakistan, based in the sense they do travel across the globe as they're implemented. So Shell was starting. So you get to go to UK, you get to go to Thailand, Pakistan, this, all based on IBM's portfolio. So ICI was an amazing time, amazing company to work for. But IBM had a global presence. You could move around and you get much more exposure. So that's how I ended up in IBM.
In IBM, I understand that this would have been late 90s, early 2000s, wouldn't it?
This time would be, my graduation is 2001. So this was 2009 when I joined IBM.
Okay, when you joined IBM, right. So the IT boost had already established itself.
Yes.
It was already there in Pakistan. Interesting. And when did you decide to make the move to Australia?
So that's a bit of a sad story, but a bit of a, So initially around 2010, a bunch of my friends from IBM were applying for Australian immigration. That recently, I think, opened up, or maybe it had been open, but nobody had taken in mass to go there.
Yeah.
So I, for the sake of it, I just put in the application. It wasn't very expensive at that time, so I applied, and but I didn't have no intention to go. But then Karachi, being Karachi, I think 2-3 years passed. I got my immigration. I still wouldn't go.
Yeah.
So one day, you sort of got into a situation where you were your life sort of got threatened. So then it clicked that my patriotism might be actually getting too far ahead. So for this to happen, and there were plenty of other circumstances where other people had similar things. So before probability goes up against me, it's better that I move with my family to a safer environment. There are obvious pros and cons as to your parents and this and your environment being changed and this and that. But I would say that the age of 36 when I moved was probably, even at that age, very hard for me to adjust to Australia.
Yeah, of course.
Because you've been brought up in a different environment.
And you've spent majority of your professional life in another different environment. Yeah. You're used to your life.
So it was a big shock. So your home changed, actually I didn't get much of a shock from the travel or the change of environment as much, because I had traveled a lot. My father was in PIA, so I had seen 17-18 countries. So Australian culture wasn't exactly a shock for me. Yeah. But still, you've been uprooted and placed into a different environment. It's different to traveling and tourism.
Yeah.
People think that because, I've been to Paris. You don't know the actual Parisian's life.
Yes. Right? You don't know the back streets. You don't know the back alleys, because that's what one of the things that when people think about Paris, right? They think about the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, it's so romantic, the romantic capital of the world. They don't understand that back alley or backstreet crime rates in it's very high in Paris. And so if you go down into some of the slums of Paris, they're filthy. They're as filthy as any other city that you would see in the world. But that's something that you don't actually see in the media.
Even in Paris, I was there on one of the trips from I think IBM, and I was entering the pass for the train when you enter it, and this was right in front of the Louvre. Yeah, so it's not really slum side of the city as well. A guy probably, I don't know, I didn't even see the guy. He just came up behind, put a hand on the shoulder. He jumped over the partition that was actually about to open. Partially open. He just jumped over. Yeah. So imagine his size and the speed that I didn't even see the guy. He just came, jumped, and ran through. And while I was still recovering, the gates closed. Yes. So and they're so used to it that the lady who was sitting there at the counter, she could see across. Yes. What happened? She just said, "You press the button, the gates opened again."
Just go ahead.
It happens all the time.
Right.
So that's the part that you don't necessarily see, because you just arrive for a day or two.
Yes.
Expensive city, you move.
Yeah, it's different living in any city as a tourist. Yeah, and that's true for any city in the world, whether it's New York, London, Paris, whatever. Right. So what year did you eventually move to Australia?
So I moved across in 2013. We came for a visit.
Yes.
And the day I actually took off from Karachi was 14th of August, 2014.
But the day I took off from Karachi, it was the 14th of Feb.
You also picked a date. So that's basically what we did. So my friend received me at the airport. He said, still the 14th. What a day for you to pick. So it was good from that point onwards. Came here, settled down. And the one thing I'm really thankful about is the city is very safe.
Yes, it is.
Yes, compared to any other place I've been in the world, I don't think like my house initially didn't have an outside wall, so my children were very afraid. How come this thing doesn't have an outside wall?
And, they're not used to it.
And why is it so dark? So why did Daddy? He was telling my wife, why did Daddy bring us in the middle of a jungle?
Yeah.
Because compared to Karachi, there are just way too many trees.
Yes.
And foliage in here. Maybe if somebody from Islamabad wouldn't feel so odd. But the foliage is much higher in Sydney compared to there. Yeah. So that's definitely helped. But I was still stunned for about 3 months, I remember. I feel like there was a numbness sort of.
Yeah, of course.
Brain couldn't really adjust that this is actually the new reality, and would keep trying to sort of wake up from the matrix or whatever. And eventually it will adjust. But so your conscious mind and your subconscious have very different ways of adjusting.
Yeah, of course. But eventually you do adjust. And what I found is I also went through a similar shock when I moved, but eventually I've just fallen in love with Sydney. I've fallen in love with the metropolitan vibe of it all and the fast-paced nature of the city. Yeah, absolutely love it. Plus, there's the opportunity to do whatever you want to do, be whatever you want to be. It is unmatched.
Definitely. Yeah. Lots of freedom, and they encourage it. They have lots of startups over here. So they encourage this mentality that you don't necessarily need to work for a large corporation or something like that. Yep. Every nick and corner, there's a startup present.
This is another thing that I noticed back in Pakistan, right? Or back in any of the other developing countries, right? South Asia. There are only a select few companies that you target, that only if you have a career with these companies, then your career is actually worth something.
Definitely.
Right, right.
My father-in-law wasn't going to give me my wife till I signed up for the ICI. It was a big point there that now he's arrived.
Yeah. Now he's exactly the arrival of it all. That unless you work for this company or these set of companies, your career is not really a career, right? Whereas you come over here and you can have a very decent and very rewarding life and a career working for any odd company. And over here, people don't, within the working culture, they don't really value the worth of the company in its dollar value. They value the worth of the job that they're doing based on their work life balance that is being offered, the workplace environment that they're being given. They care for those things more than anything else.
Policies, this. So, but you see that generations have changed, right? So what's happened as well is that during my father's time, and like when my father worked for PIF for 35 years,
yes,
first job and the last job.
Yeah.
Right. So it was sort of like cradle to the grave kind of things.
Yeah.
And they would actually look after you with pension. And so once you get in, that's it.
Yeah.
Your last breath, they're there. That's changing.
That's a mindset that I believe is changing with our generation. Like up till our parents' generation, the fact was that you get a job and you be thankful for that job, and you stay with that job through thick and thin, no matter if even if your employer is abusive to a point.
Yes, you can still put up with it.
I think it was more out of necessity than anything, because you go to South Asian countries, the amount of competition in the market, because the number of graduates being produced every year, there's just a finite number of jobs in the market, right? So you have to compete. If you're not willing to do a job or put up with your employer, there are 10 other people who are willing to do the same at a lesser pay.
Definitely. So the choice is less, had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Over here, I think because if one company abuses, the law will come after them.
Yes.
They can be shut down. They can have very severe repercussions.
Yes.
I've actually come across a bit of harassment here as well, and the law is very strong. I had no issue. If you raise your voice, they were absolutely supportive.
Yes.
Right. This would not be the case in Pakistan. You can get away with a lot of
stuff. And they actually do. They still do. You'd be surprised. A lot of reputable companies get away with a lot. Okay, so 2014, now you've moved to Australia, and you continued on with IBM in Australia.
Yeah, I continued for about 4 years, maybe 3.5 with IBM. From IBM, we moved on to, actually, I got poached into entity data. So entity data is actually not ENTITY, it's N and then T and T, which is Nippon Telegraph and Telegram. So a lot of people get this confusion out. They try to figure out the other entity and they never come across.
Yep.
So entity is basically Japanese.
Yes.
So their telecom provider, Docomo, is there. Basically, it belongs to entity. It's a national company there.
Yeah.
And of its IT department is basically this offshoot. So they've got global list of companies, US, Africa, Europe, everywhere. And they merge them under one entity brand. There's entity global incorporated in Sydney. There's also entity data, and there are maybe 3-4 others that are present. So I got poached over there. So they had a SAP division, but more than SAP, they wanted a big data scientist there. At that time, data scientist word wasn't really that common.
Yeah.
This is 2017, so data scientist wasn't really that thing. So I got hired as a big data developer or manager or whatever, and from there, we actually, I started to push for the AI side. Initially, I was told, you're smoking the wrong kind of Kool-Aid or whatever thing, and it's not going to work out. But as AI started to move, so the thinking about this space, and did pretty well.
Right. So the next eventual question is that, was that the time when you discovered a passion for data and AI at that point?
The passion for data was already there, I think, because I'd been playing around with data as part of SAP. Because within SAP, this goes back to 2003, they actually had this plant manager at one of the implementations. So this was in Kyoto, in salt mines.
Yeah.
Not inside the salt mines. Some viewers might not get the idea.
Close
to it. They have a whole huge factory which was established before Pakistan was built. So about 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah.
So that factory, they still have posters from the older times.
Okay.
Just for memory purposes and all that kind of stuff. So they basically, the plant manager actually asked that, you create a consolidated report. Today it's not a big deal. You can get a consolidated report of your HR and production and sales and this on a single page. It's not a big deal. It's a dashboard.
Yeah.
But in 2002, if you were to ask something, this was a huge deal.
Yeah, of course.
And if you ask on your mobile, people's jaw would drop. Want it.
Yeah.
On your mobile phone. So that thing actually gave me the idea that because SAP at that time did not have a very good warehousing kind of system, so it could not process the data in this fashion. So if you ask for a report, sure, you can have it, but there'll be 5-10 different reports. So you can just merge them yourself. So he didn't want to execute 10 reports every morning and then try to marry them together. He wanted one page. So he said, well, what he's asking for, you'll need to compress the data. So compression is basically where data warehousing comes in.
Okay.
That you take a million rows and you just say, I just want to know how much invoicing was done yesterday. I don't want the whole, yada yada what happened and which customer and which we sold it to. So that basically the system would compress it the night before. In the morning when the guy would come, it would just access that data
particular
store
data
and show
that
him
you
the
need.
data. So he was absolutely ecstatic. So then I got the idea that actually this data processing actually has some merit in it and can add a value to the company, because other data managers then started to ask, and then a lot of systems are integrated into it. So we moved on to when IBM started. So IBM also valued this skill a lot, and we did a lot of data cleansing and all this for Shell. So and they paid millions of dollars for it.
Yeah,
so you get to learn that it's not a joke that you're removing some stuff. There can be data corruption in the sense that if somebody wrote an address and it was and the standard that Shell had set was you cannot say that this is near XYZ petrol pump. You must say the actual house number and this and this and this, and the struggle that would happen to get that information out, because the guy would say, I have no clue. There was no Google Maps at that time.
Yes.
So best of luck. Use Google Earth to see where my pump is and figure out whatever.
Yeah.
So there is value there, but we generally don't, as normal. If you stay away from the data side, you don't really see, why bother with all this. So then we actually move on, and what happens is that once it gets to AI side, AI is even more sensitive than your normal reporting. If you see a report, your human intelligence is still present. So you can directly look at the report and say, in line number 3, something's wrong. That number doesn't match with this, or my understanding from previous memory is. But AI system is like a train, which is or a bullet that you shot at a long distance. It's very sensitive to winds and all this kind of thing. So if you put one wrong data marker in the middle, it will just go off track.
Okay.
So you get to understand on a stage level that
the sensitivity of the data.
Exactly, how sensitive it is to this data and what importance it holds. So we have actually built for entity, for example, what they called a data pathway. That you initially have this sort of built in a picture of where the dam and the water is rising behind the dam. So you have a lot of data, and nobody's cleaning it, nobody's maintaining. It's just piling up, and you get sort of a point where you actually say, okay, let me break it up into smaller portions and use it to power the turbine. And so we actually explained that initially you need to get it to a warehouse. Then on top of the warehouse, you have to do further cleansing for AI to actually absorb, and then intelligence can come in.
Yes.
So a lot of people would just say, and I've heard one CIO mention this as well. Oh, what's the big deal? I have tons of money. I have lots of data. I will point the AI to look at the data and make sense out of it. That age hasn't yet arrived.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way still.
It's not that kind of a genie of a lamp and all that kind of thing. Go find the data, make sense out of it, and tell me what the answer that I was asking for.
Right. Since we're getting into the topic about it, that it's not a genie yet, but it is heading in that direction.
It is,
And over the past couple of years, AI has become the new buzzword. Ever since the advent of ChatGPT, for example, or DALL-E, or any of these other generative AIs. Okay, before I get to the more detailed questions, there are a lot of people out there who everybody's heard of AI at this point, right? Not necessarily everybody understands what AI is or what its limitations are, right? Explain AI to me as if you're explaining it to a 10-year-old. What does AI and neural network and all of this?
So this comes from that, the answer comes from that book which I had to write after learning AI. Because see, the AI field is actually a mixture of different things. Most people are surprised that the term was coined in late 40s, 1940s.
Okay.
It wasn't coined in the last 10 years or 20 years.
So it was coined in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then people talk about, so the definition is that if a machine, strictly speaking, if a machine is able to mimic human cognition, human understanding, it is considered artificial intelligence. Right. The level of intelligence is not the question. It's basically the machine is mimicking humans' intelligence. Right. It's much more than a simple Excel formula. An example I'll tell you. The one thing that often gets people all riled up is that in a normal coding environment, or even in your Excel sheet, you have a desired, you have some data, 2 fields, 3 fields, 1 field, whichever. You have a certain formula in your head, and there's the cell where you will land the value.
Yes.
In Excel, right? Simple enough. In AI, so basically the formula is sort of your box. Data goes in and out comes the answer.
Yes.
Right? In AI, it's a bit reverse. Okay. The box is where the AI does its work. You give the input, you also give the desired output.
And it figures out a way to give you that
the
output.
path you leave alone to the machine to figure out.
Okay.
This gets people really riled up. Leave the how part alone. Okay. That is a longer discussion that we can have as to how it applies statistics, how it applies other learning methods to figure this part out.
Yeah.
A lot of maths goes in, And other than maths, within maths there's statistics, but statistics is more is the empirical implementation side of mathematics. It's not pure mathematics.
Yeah.
So pure maths is also used, statistics is also used, business understanding is also used. How it actually is designed to figure this out, that if you said this image of a cat, this is an image of a cat, of a dog, and then you say maybe 10 examples of it, and then 11th time you actually bring in a cat not seen before,
A live cat.
no, I mean it can be just a picture, right? It's going to actually see pixels in the end.
Yeah.
If you sees that, that's a cat. Now, how it actually did that, that you leave alone to that machine's capability, right?
Yeah.
But we're just talking about definition here, so
Yes.
I won't go into further depth. But the concept is the box, how it actually mapped the input to the output is the AI's problem.
Yeah.
So that's how AI works.
Okay, that's how AI works. Okay, got it. You leave the box alone, the box works its magic and it gives you the desired result. Okay. The problem now arises that we are wanting that box to mimic human cognition.
Yes. We want to enhance it further.
Yeah, so now it gets to the point that the box actually starts doing things faster, better, in a more efficient way than our box works.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Now this comes with its own implications. At some point, you realize that, okay, if the box can do work better than a human being, what's the point of the human being in the entire process? So is that what AI, all of these AI platforms, everybody working in AI, all the researchers who are on the bleeding edge of AI, is that what they're trying to do? That they're trying to minimize and then eventually eliminate human input from technology altogether? Is that the eventual goal?
Okay, we can start the conversation from there. I'll explain how they actually got there and all that as well. There's a bit of a story as to how it all happened.
Yeah.
Some of it is a surprise even to the data scientists themselves.
Okay.
So the idea, I don't think, is to make us short answer, is that I don't think anybody is trying to take the human out of the loop. But what is happening is that they didn't expect this amount of intelligence to come out of those boxes
This quickly.
Like, for example, if you go back 4 years,
Yeah.
they were the smaller language models, not
Yes.
compared to ChatGPT. They're smaller than that, and they could do basic stuff. Like if you explain a bit, give it a bit of poetry, it would try to summarize the poetry. You asked a few questions: what color was the whale? This, it could reasonably figure it out. Then they started to get a little bit more intelligent, and things like if you were asking them a question, or maybe it was asking you a question and you were answering deliberately, it said, what is the color of the snail and the whale? And you deliberately switched the colors. From the whale, you gave the snail the color in the same sentence. So people started to trick this with online tests.
Yes.
They would actually give both answers. The machine would get confused and say, yeah, at least blue is there, so blue was the whale, and okay, let's.
Yeah.
Then they started to get smarter. They could understand the context in which you mentioned that word.
Okay.
So I saw this about 3 years back. Then within a year of that, there was some debate that we actually have 2 novels or 3 novels from J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings. We probably will feed this into the AI and see what happens. And they came back the next month and they said, well, Danting wrote an entire 5th book or 4th book. Okay. And it actually understood that dwarves live in caves and the sky is blue and this. We thought we were supposed to teach that thing, the color of the sky. And
Hang
this.
on. There is a 5th book that's completely written by AI.
Yeah, it wrote it. They never published it. But they
Wow.
mentioned in that it is capable of reading the 3 and figuring out what would be the 4th. And it had the same dystopian vision that,
And it came up with the plot for the 5th book.
Yeah, it pretty much came up with the plot.
Wow.
And they didn't mention further how strong was the storyline and
Yeah.
were there any inconsistencies.
Yeah,
and yada,
yeah,
yada.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
said it was a pretty decent.
Yeah,
writing.
like
it made sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody was flying in the air, and there wasn't
Yeah.
a mad, a wizard who would just turn into a whatever. It made some sense, and they said that was very, and it also borrowed the dark theme that the other books had.
Oh my
That the world will come to an end.
My
and
mind
this,
is a
that,
little
that.
blown right now.
So that's the time I actually realized that it's the genie is a little bit out of their control. Okay?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they're doing the maths, they're doing the statistics, they're doing the pure maths, they're figuring out how it's learning. The internal engine that is being used, which is called neural nets, you'll come across. It's a mimicry of how your human brain works.
Yes.
Like, the easiest way to explain it, people talk about layers and all, and fine, that's fine. But even if you look at this table, when you initially look at the table, okay, your brain actually sees the external outlines of the table.
Yeah.
Then it will look at maybe the little circular part there. Look
Yeah.
at maybe the suspension of the black, and it will figure out there's one large object, then there's smaller objects, and within the smaller object there's a mic, and then there's a wire. So they actually have these layers in a similar fashion. The upper layer will just figure out where's the cat in the picture. There's sort of object.
Yeah.
I'll come to that a bit. Then there's another object. Okay, this is a dog, and so it also tries to learn step by step, just so your brain does it.
Yeah.
So they have an understanding of how, because the original idea when the neural nets were invented in the 80s, 90s, was that, and they were considered failure because machines didn't have the capacity to process. So it's an interesting story that AI goes through this period they call winters. Originally invented in 50s to start. They tried to decode the Russian language. It was maybe 60 years ahead of its time, so the machines couldn't do it. Rotten crap. Then they again had it in the 70s. Tried to make expert systems for plants. Again, didn't work. So they said for a little while it worked. They dropped. Neural nets are from the 90s, 80s.
Wow.
So, and they were dropped.
Yeah.
Then in 2005, they were again picked up. And the actual burst happened in 2012 with neural nets, where actually they had this ImageNet competition, very famous one, where Google actually managed to use an ImageNet to break the record for the capacity of a machine to recognize this cat, dog, kites, and this and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when the world suddenly turned and said, okay, this neural net business is not actually nonsense. It makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So in that mimicry of that neural net, the most scary part, I'll tell you, is most data scientists will try to avoid access here in discussing. We don't really understand how those layers work.
Right. So yes, like we allowed the computer to develop its own layering of how it processes that information, but it's not necessary that the computer is understanding it in a way or in a sequence that is understandable to us.
Yes. Or in a way that if you perceive this world, you can study 3 dimensions because that's what we live in.
Yes.
You can maybe fathom a 4th dimension, maybe a 5th.
Yes.
Really stretch the imagination. The machine is running around in pure mathematics.
So
right?
it can
it has
conjure
infinite
up
number of dimensions it can think in. So for it to explain in your language how it got there is very difficult.
Yes.
And each time it's doing it is going through a different pathway.
Yeah.
So 1,000 dimensions, 5,000 dimensions.
Yes.
Like ChatGPT is using, I think, 2,500 dimensions or something. And if you ask it, how did you come to the answer? How is it going to tell you?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, for us to ask ChatGPT how you came to the answer, ChatGPT would actually have to dumb down its answer for us to understand.
Yeah. So it won't be like I'm decoding the AI part for a 10-year-old explanation.
Yeah.
It'll be like a 1,000-year-old chap decoding it down to maybe a 5-year-old or something like that. It's a very long journey, and I don't think we've reached that point. There are some tricks in which you can get some idea that how is the machine roughly understanding this, but it's a very rough cut.
Okay.
Maybe a bar chart or something, a graph, and some lines, and I generally think yes.
Okay, so one question that I've had about AI, I think you're the best person to ask this. I've used ChatGPT. Everybody used ChatGPT for fun or for work. Otherwise, disclaimer: if anybody wants to proofread their emails, ChatGPT is amazing at proofreading your emails and drafting them. Okay, so my understanding is, okay, ChatGPT is a very cool feature. It's amazing at what it does. It increases your productivity tenfold, whatnot, right? I feel that ChatGPT is limited by human intelligence because ChatGPT, all the answers that ChatGPT gets, it basically gets it from whatever is available to it on the internet, right?
Sure.
So isn't AI, in a larger sense, limited by human intelligence? Or is it eventually going to get to a point that it will start doing its own research and coming up with its own deductions, and then we're really in trouble that it will leave us far behind?
I think it's already gone past that.
You think so?
Yeah, it's already gone past. It's just that we don't fully understand. So before, what happened with ChatGPT, DeepMind did this competition with I think Sudal or whatever that Korean chaps. He was a grand champion of
Go.
game of Go. Right?
I know.
So that game basically is where they introduced this concept where the machine does self-learning.
Yes.
It will actually play a game and learn from its mistakes like a human being does. Again, using neural networks, but a different structure of neural networks. Sort of a multi-part brain. So like our brain also has internal compartments, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and there are different portions. So they gave them two different kinds of a thing. One would criticize, the other one would generate the idea, see if it could get it past the critic.
Yes.
So those kind of models. And they basically, what it did was that it started to make moves in that competition, which that grandmaster eventually admitted it had never seen a human being do before.
I've seen that one.
So it played the game with humans,
yes,
and eventually started playing in ways against itself. Yes. Right. So two models of what were they called back then? Whatever name that they given them. DeepMind had given them a certain name. Alpha Zero.
Alpha Zero.
Yeah.
Right.
So Alpha something, Alpha Zero, and then there was another one. So they basically started playing against each other. So they kept the human aside, and we were playing just against one another.
Wow.
And in them, they started to make moves which are outside of our intelligence. That how did you figure that one out?
Wow.
Right. Like they gave this robot. This is a more graphic example. They gave this robot with an AI chip, and they said you have 4 legs. So robot did have 4 legs, sort of like a spider kind of thing, but you're not allowed to use your feet to move from point A to point B on the table. They said, let's see what it does.
Okay.
Will it blow a circuit or something? We can't really blow a circuit, but
Yeah,
that's just in our world.
Yeah.
Let's see what it does. They said, try to think, just thought about it for a little while. It flipped itself on its back. Then it dragged itself, just by wriggling its feet or something. Yes, it just created a motion where it would wriggle.
Yeah.
And from wriggling, it started to move from. It says, I'm not touching my feet to the floor.
Wow.
It was just raising the feet and just rotating somewhere and then moving across.
Right.
So he said, I figured out a way across your little puzzle that you created for me.
Wow.
I have feet. Don't use the feet. So okay, I'll use my back, and then
Amazing.
I'll slither my. Yeah, it had some sort of movement in the back of it.
Amazing.
So it used its spine like a snake to move across. I'm not using my feet.
Yeah. Before we move away from that point, the documentary that he was talking about an AI playing the game of Go against a grandmaster, it's available on YouTube. I'll attach the link for it somewhere on the screen right now. If anybody has not watched it, do watch it. It will blow your mind on how advanced AI has become. And this documentary in itself is, I think, about 4 or 5 years old at this point.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. And when I first saw it, more than anything, I felt this sense of dread that what is coming for us eventually. Like you said, the computer ends up making moves that the grandmaster is not even able to fathom, in his normal routine. Right.
Sorry, before we move on, this actually has an older predecessor behind it. So IBM actually had this history against Gary Kasparov. That was a grandmaster of chess, late 90s.
Yeah, you're talking about Deep Blue.
Deep Blue. So Deep Blue is probably what inspired that AI game that I made as well.
AlphaGo.
That was no, the one I made is just for checkers. Right?
Okay.
So that one was just using game trees. So
Right.
just to get a concept for the audience and yourself as well, how complex the thing can get.
Yes.
Chess is far more complex as compared to checkers.
Yes.
And Go is far more complex than chess itself is.
Yes.
Right? So I actually was just reading a paper that IBM had written, how that thing was calculating. And my argument was that IBM's got enough money,
Yeah.
make a nice big machine,
Yeah.
calculate every possibility
Yes.
that the future moves can bring in,
Yeah.
and just come up with the answer.
Yeah.
The IBM data scientist of that time had written that actually the 2 to the power is maybe going to be this long.
Yeah.
How many possible moves is there?
Right.
So even our most advanced machines will stagger and fall.
Yes.
So we actually had to build in some sort of a nuance and intelligence inside that system, so it wouldn't try to go that far.
Yeah.
It would just use its sort of sense of how the game should be played, just like a human being would. And they were successful to an extent, not to the level of Go. But Go actually has enough moves that it can supersede the number of atoms in the universe.
Yeah, I heard
that drama. So there, then you need actual intelligence to play, because if you sit and try to calculate to the end, it will fail.
It will fail. Amazing. Like, I'm taking a while just to process all of this. This is mind blowing stuff, because my concern is, even if you look at our technology from the past 20-25 years, right? You look at something as trivial as a TV or an electronic device that we use at our homes, a TV, a washing machine, anything. You go to a layman and you ask, how does this thing work? You use it every day.
No
You
clue.
use your TV every day. You use your washing machine every other day. Well, how does it work? Nobody would be able to give you the answer. Nobody knows how all of this stuff is working. And now it's getting to a point that AI is coming up with ways to process information and make sense out of it in layers, like you said, that are even beyond human comprehension. Yeah. So where does this go? My concern is that eventually AI might get to a point that AI realizes that, okay, human intelligence or human instruction is actually slowing us down. Human intervention is actually that's the rock that is weighing us down. So how far off are we until an AI program actually tells us that, okay, you guys just
Leave it back.
you guys just leave it back. You guys just stay behind. Let us take care of it.
The thing is that this goes in the area of consciousness.
Yes.
Okay. So thankfully, right now there is no sign that the machine itself has been able to evolve a consciousness similar to ours. Like right now, it can demonstrate. Actually, it is correct now to. And there was a couple of data scientists that were discussing this. I think Google's and a couple of others quite recently. That can you say that the machine has passed the Turing test?
Yes.
So the Turing test is basically where if you can't see the other person and you ask a question, he or she replies, can you tell that that is a human or a machine? The machine like ChatGPT can definitely fake a human being.
Yeah,
And you
the,
won't be able
the
to tell.
introduction that I just read out at the start of this video, if I hadn't told that I did not write it, nobody would be able to
Yes,
discern it.
generally it's not possible.
It's not possible to discern it.
But sometimes from the flowery language, people can tell, but
Yeah.
not 100%.
Not 100%. Yeah.
And after the Turing test comes the part that those two were discussing that, okay, it's past that one.
Yeah.
Can you say that the machine is mimicking our intelligence, or is it creating its own worldview of how the world exists and then answering from there?
Yes.
Because there's a difference.
Yeah.
In one, you are a parrot.
Yeah.
In the other one, you are an intelligent being.
Intelligent being, right?
Maybe without a conscious, but you don't know that you are alive, okay, or the definition of life, and let's not get in there. So all four of them agreed that it had created in its memory an actual worldview of how humans exist, what color is the sky, how does life work, there's death, there's birth, there's a cycle, there's this, there is physics and chemistry, just like we have in our heads. So that brings us to that blog as well that I wrote about it.
Yeah.
That most people don't understand that actually, just like our human brain from day one is absorbing skills, knowledge, colors, this. The reason why my eyes can see this table is because it's learned over time that there is a physical table when I see this kind of colors, and there's a neural net at the back that's processing it in the visual cortex of the brain.
Yes.
That machine has also used its central core to create that kind of a brain inside itself, just in ones and zeros, but still a similar intelligence does exist there that is actually looking at these pixels and saying, oh, there's a table there. Definitely there's a table there.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just saying that the color looks like this, or he told me the color is like, it's not really doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point it was in the past, but that jump has been very severe.
Very severe. Like the way I think about it, right? Imagine a human and an AI system are looking at a horse running around a race course, right? A human being would perceive it as a horse, a brown colored horse, running around very fast, the term very fast, around a circular track on a clear day. On a clear day, right? The AI would perceive it as a horse of XYZ breed running around a track that is X kilometers long at X amount of speed on a day that has a UV index of
This much.
XY. So these are things that humans, even if the brightest minds in the world, cannot be able to perceive or compute at any given time. It has moved beyond human capacity.
It is certainly going in that direction. So once it actually has a worldview, then you actually see things like if you ask ChatGPT a medical question plus some personal problem plus something else, it's still able to follow.
Yes.
That the link is there because your human brain would have followed. If you were a doctor plus a physician plus this, you would still been able to follow. It will also follow. But the weakness still remains that, and this is concern one of my other friends were raising, is that right now these models have just sort of drunk from the river of all that knowledge that mankind had created in the last thousands of years. But as ChatGPT regurgitates that information, fine, you can't track down who originally wrote it and from where it actually, sort of made a sort of a mix out of it and brought it out. But if humans stop writing, and it's just the machines writing for machines, wouldn't it become problematic at some point?
It would.
And
because at some point it will move past the comprehension of human beings, like something written by a machine for a machine
that could go like
would be incomprehensible to human beings, and at that point we're out of the loop.
Their point was slightly different. His point was basically that if humans stop writing, where will the machines copy from then onwards from there? So they might actually start to break down or slow down their intelligence boost. Because right now, what has happened is that compute power has become much cheaper. We figured out ways of doing very cheap compute, especially with the cloud providers and all this kind of thing coming in.
And with quantum computing on the verge.
Computing now on the verge. And so that basically has accelerated and so it's become very cheap to follow. But eventually, we are running out of that data.
Yes.
So each model that comes out, like GPT-4, GPT-5 will come out, they will have huger and larger data sets, but we will eventually run out of it. Our data production is too slow for further sort of, it's like you're extracting sugarcane juice, right? Eventually, you're going to run out of the sugarcane.
Yes.
Right? And the machines can't be expected to generate it because that came from our intellect, which actually still has that higher capacity of consciousness.
Yes.
Speaking of consciousness, a friend of mine actually had this discussion about khayal. That basically is a philosophical concept.
Yes.
Okay, of how exactly life works and this. And he said he was shocked what ChatGPT could answer from quotations from books of philosophers, from Aristotle to. He said, I didn't even know those guys existed. And it can continue to follow what his line of thought was.
Yes.
But still, he said, I couldn't figure out that did it have a soul or not. Because that's still a place where humans still have an advantage. Okay.
Now this is then going into a very philosophical discussion.
Yeah, it is.
What is a soul? What is consciousness in itself? If consciousness, and this is a quote from directly from the Matrix. Morbius was explaining this to Neo when Neo was first plugged. He was first set free from the Matrix. That if reality is something that you can see or taste or touch or feel, then reality is simply just electromagnetic signals firing through your neurons. If a computer can fire the exact same signals within its chipset, what differs your thought or your perception from a machine's?
I think this goes into that philosophical area, but I think consciousness is more, in my sense, how you know innately what is right and wrong, which is difficult and comes from the soul rather than from the actual body in the machine that is present
Morality.
as a physical self, like morality.
Yeah.
Like for example, in most Terminator movies, the concept of morality never comes to the machine. It
Yes.
just calculates that a human is a problem and I'm going to eliminate.
Yeah.
It never talks about the actual consciousness. So
Yeah.
maybe it can even, I'm saying it can even maybe one day mimic our feelings, because feelings may have certain ways in which they come out and can mimic that. But still, there is going to be one layer which it will be very difficult to cross.
Yeah, there's this very famous, what do you call it? A very famous thought experiment in morality, philosophical thought experiment, the train carriage experiment.
I haven't come across
Yeah,
it. But
it's so the experiment is that imagine that you are the driver of a train, right? Your train is there's a fork in the rails, right?
Okay.
You can choose which track the train goes on. One track has 5 people on it. The other
Oh,
track,
that
the,
one.
the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
track
yeah, yeah,
has
yeah.
one person
But
on
please
it,
continue, yeah.
right? Now you have to choose: do you kill the 5 people to save the one, or do you kill the one person to save 5 people? Now, you ask this question to 1,000 people, majority of them would say that they would kill the one person to save the 5 people because the weightage of 5 lives is higher than the one person.
Simple math.
Right? Simple maths. Second question, the follow-up question immediately is, okay, what if that one person is your brother?
Now the calculation will change.
Now the calculation is completely on its head. That everybody would say, nah, I'd save my brother. I'd kill the 5 people because I don't know them, but I'd save my brother.
Yes, if you don't know.
What would an AI system say if it is presented with the same kind of dilemma?
Very hard to tell, actually. Right now, they're still following our instructions.
Yeah.
So even the data sets that ChatGPT 4 and all that are absorbing, they are curated, they are controlled by our side. Right? It's not really picking its own data sets and doing whatever it wants to do inside. So in this case, also, if you set a metric that the actual record or the metric is that you should preserve lives, it will continue to kill that one person and will leave the other 4 or 5 alone.
Yeah, because the weightage is there.
The weightage is there. But if a human comes in and says, no, my metric is different, or this is the scary part where most of the Terminator movies comes in, the machine evolves to a point where it overrides its original coding. And it's like you said, that the human is actually the one holding me back, so I'm going to cut it off. I'll write my own code and say, okay, the metric should be whatever.
Yeah.
Now that whatever where it comes from is basically where the soul and all that come in, the morality comes in and says, and feelings even come in. So so soul is basically what will tell you moral wise which is better. And feelings will come in where your family and all that is basically there. So yeah, so that's basically where the machine will struggle to actually write its own. And I think so far there's no sign that it will actually evolve to that state.
Okay, so now if we look at the horizon of where all of this is going, right? I've seen a lot of sci-fi movies. I've seen all the Terminator movies. I've seen Avengers: Age of Ultron. Everybody agrees. Are we headed in that direction that SkyNet will actually become live, or Ultron will try to exterminate humankind, or that the Matrix will actually plug us in? Is that a reality?
I think what we're going for is much more benign.
Or on the flip side, sorry, on the flip side, is it that AI will turn this world into a utopia where human beings don't have to work at all and all our needs are catered to by our subservient AI servants?
I think it's a bit of a mixture. To answer your first question, the machines I don't think are headed in a kind of a Terminator kind of sequence. I think what is more running towards is that the intelligence is jumping and increasing at paces that we are having difficulty following. So we still think of them as something we ask, like ChatGPT, when we are in the mood.
Yep.
They will eventually start to plug it into normal workflows.
Yes.
So your boss will probably query ChatGPT before he bothers to ask you about that particular thing.
Yes.
And ChatGPT might be plugged in into the database of that company, and he can just get the answer from there. He doesn't need to bug you to get to that answer. But that also means that your boss can let you go.
Exactly.
because happens.
That's the point.
But the other side is that as these automations come in, they will generate other work to cater to the new workforce of machines. So you need to people who have computer science degrees or whichever degrees, but to maintain them,
Yeah.
so they can run faster.
Yeah.
But that does not make us their slaves.
Yeah.
We are still controlling them.
Yeah.
But to maintain them, we need it. So what will happen is right now there's a whole ton of people who are maybe using 5% of their brain. They are doing the most serious jobs. Sometimes it's just hard luck in life that your education didn't meet up, whatever issues that you had were coming up, and you only can get to this particular stage in life, and you just feel stuck. You can't go up.
Yeah.
Machines will take over everything
Yes.
on that level. So the driving, the serving stuff,
Cooking.
in your hotel, cooking, your airplanes, your this, transport systems, everything, even normal analysts that you ever have. Just step aside. That machine, even today, you can get ChatGPT, put a plugin for code interpreter, point it to a data set, point the second part to a simple notebook, and say, I wanted you to analyze that data set and put all the commands and the graphs that you see from that exploration in this notebook.
Yeah.
Write everything down. In 10-15 seconds, it will be all done.
Yeah.
Why would you want to get yourself a particular person to be hired? So what will happen to people is that they will have to leave their mundane jobs and go find jobs at a higher intelligence level.
But that's the problem, isn't it? Because the rate at which AI is evolving and becoming more and more capable, human beings are not evolving at the same rate, and because of the limitation of our age is that AI might be able to evolve itself within a matter of a couple of years from 0 to 100, but human beings cannot upskill themselves when, let's say, a middle-aged 30-40-year-old guy is not able to upskill himself at the same rate.
Yeah, definitely. I see that problem. So what will happen is when this sort of a change comes in, like the industrial evolution came in, a lot of people initially are jobless, right? You don't need that many farmers, or at least the farmers have moved to the factories, and so there'll be a massive disruption.
Yes.
When it fully kicks in, I estimate about 5 years, it will fully be in place.
But I think it will be much worse than the disruption caused by the industrial revolution, because a lot more people are going to get impacted by it, and because the population of the world is much larger now compared to when it was at the time of the industrial revolution. Quantity wise, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be jobless.
Yes. So there's no running away from it.
Yeah.
So even when I was making automation software for Entity, one comment I would always get is, Mr. Deal, at the end of it, this will get me fired. So I'd rather not, apply that software. But as time passes, your bosses and everything, your CEO will figure out that I can get 100 of those machines.
Yes.
For a fraction of these lot, this 20 lot that I've got here.
And
I don't even pay them bonus.
Yes.
They can work 24 hours.
Yes.
And they have higher intelligence or equal intelligence to this lot. I can fire them as well. I can get ChatGPT 6 if I want. I can't touch. So you see, that's how CEOs and all are designed to work, because they need to return value to the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Because eventually the stakeholders will start asking them, if you could have done this at 10% cost, why did you spend 90% getting these guys in? So there'll be a debate where there'll be a human context to it, that you can't certainly let go of this many people. They will be given hopefully some chances to try to improve. But you're also right. And this was shown very graphically in some meme or some cartoon somebody had made, that our children and our age is also very heavily impacted by entertainment.
Yes.
So whilst we are actually sitting there on our tablets and looking at movies and not movies, TikTok, this short time span, MTV is like a kid, right? TikTok is far ahead of what MTV was in our time.
Yeah.
So you're busy just staring at your phone and just massaging it and flicking. Machine is actually learning at a lightning speed.
Yeah.
And it's busy learning while you are just busy flicking.
Exactly.
So how are you supposed to catch up with that thing? So in between there will be a very strong jerk where sort of like you suddenly find one fine morning that a whole department is gone. Like I was explaining about the analyst. Like you hire an analyst, it will take a whole day to analyze that data. The machine's done it in 30 seconds.
When I was preparing to have this discussion with you, right, I found myself returning to Homo Deus, the book by Yuval Noah Harari. Like a lot of my thoughts and a lot of my questions sprang out from there. It's a beautiful book. If anybody hasn't read it, Yuval Noah Harari's first book, Sapiens, and his second book,
Sapiens, I think I've
the Homo Deus is the follow-up to Sapiens. So Sapiens is a story of how humanity reached to this point, and Homo Deus is basically a story of how things can go into the future, right? He argues that as AI and technology improves to a point that it is beyond human comprehension and beyond human catch up, there will emerge a new class of human beings. And I believe, out of all the possible scenarios that I can see in the future, I think that one is the most plausible. And you see that with a lot of new research that is going into Neuralink or other technologies.
Exactly, that's
right?
what I was
Right. So eventually, what will happen is that it is already understood that human beings will not be able to keep up with AI at any rate. We are already beyond that point. Now, in order to keep up with them, we will have to rely on technology such as Neuralink to expand our own minds and increase our processing power to keep up with the AI. The problem with Neuralink then is that there will only be a very elite class of people who will have access to that technology.
True.
And what will happen is that that will create an upper elite class of human beings. I would almost say that that would create a new species of human beings who are ultra fast at thinking. They have the entire information that is available on the internet in a split second on their
They can access it.
on their fingertips, and they are able to. And Neuralink would not just enhance their mental capacity. Neuralink also has the ability to enhance their physical capacity as well. Neuralink will be able to help people who are paraplegic to walk. It will help people who are paralyzed to stand up again. It can repair stem cells and whatnot. So basically, you're using this technology to hack your own brains and turn yourself into a superhuman. And Harari then goes on to say that the upper strata of this new species is going to be the class of human beings that will be working in conjunction with the AI in collaboration, and they will create a new world order where normal human beings such as us are reduced to stray cats or dogs or ants on the ground who are there, but they don't really notice us anymore. We're redundant to the point that nothing we do in this life or in this world will have any impact
Matters to them,
on what is going on upstairs.
That's one version of it. The one I lean more towards is that you'll find a way not to sort of give that sort of power to just the elite, but to the vast majority of people, to be able to implant that sort of intelligence inside it, so we can all grow together. And then from that point, you can imagine if all of humanity gets upgraded to GPT-4 or whatever 10,
Yeah.
and they all have access to that kind of intelligence. What God's name will be accomplished at that point?
Yeah. But that is the utopian version of it, isn't
Yeah,
it? That is like in an ideal world. But I mean, who's the first person who's going to get Neuralink? It's going to
Elon
be
Musk.
it's going to be Elon.
Yeah.
Because it's his company and he has the access to the funds to it. He's going to be the one who gets the latest upgrade of Neuralink first.
I hope he
right?
doesn't go too nuts over it, but
Yeah, that is again becoming a very, very real possibility. Um, yeah. So okay. So in the short term, for anybody who's listening right now, everybody's scared for their jobs. In the next 5 to 10 years, are human beings and human careers really in trouble?
I think a definite yes. Right.
Okay.
In the next 10 years, most definitely. In the next 5 years, we'll get some really nice heavy shocks as jobs start to disappear, because automation software previously used to have very severe problems.
Yes.
Just by looking at normal screens, if the screen format slightly changed, it would totally lose it.
Yeah.
There were 3 lines, now there's 2 lines. What happened now? But higher intelligence like ChatGPT-4, even if you make a spelling mistake,
It'll be able to pick
it
it.
doesn't care. It will jump over it and understand what it actually means. So once that gets properly embedded, and a lot of companies have started to work in that space, like AutoGPT. And what AutoGPT can do is an example of where it can actually use multiple versions of GPT to actually accomplish tasks that maybe 2 or 3 people would do. Like for example, there was one instance where they said, okay, we need to make a software for a website. So they said, okay, we'll create 7 different versions of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
One will be the designer, one will be the director, one will be the team leader, 3 will be the code developers. And so it actually generated a lot of 7, 8 to 10 people just out of the software, and they will actually coordinate their actions. One is just doing coordination, one is doing high level strategy on it. So it's looking at the UI, the UX, and whether it will work, not work. So it has that intelligence to apply. It will only stick to that space because I'm just the director and the overall, and the coders will actually concentrate on the codex portion of it, and you see what it's doing, right? It's basically taking out an entire company that you would have hired and thrown it out the window. So another instance, if you want to book flight tickets, like for example, I want to book the cheapest flight to Pakistan or wherever, and sometimes the deals come, sometimes the deals don't come. Right now, we phone a travel agent, we bug him, he bugs us, whatever, left, right. You can generate a auto GPT instance. It will I've actually seen it do this. You've actually said book a flight, one sentence, and you left it alone. It doesn't have an instruction at the back which says how to book a flight, but it will call an instant of AutoGPT and says, "Can you theorize how I would look for flights?" And it actually tells these are the possible websites you might want to go to.
Yeah.
I said, okay. Can you tell me how you will open a browser session? So yeah, there's Chrome and there's okay. So it'll open up that thing and put. So it's actually like sort of like a baby, but a very intelligent baby who has a master or something at the back to talk to. Like, Daddy, how do I do this? And it's okay, this one.
And it can pick it up immediately.
And once it brings the data all back, it will again give it to another version of ChatGPT and say, "Can you make some sense out of it? Shall I book this flight or not?" They even shown that it was arguing internally that this flight has more stops, so I shouldn't book this one. I should book for them that other one because I know the preferences of that guy. So it's already happening. It's just that it hasn't been put in a nice casing and delivered to our bosses yet. And they're afraid of this technology itself because even managers will be affected. The one I think there was a McKinsey study I was looking at last week, which was showing that the least impact will be to the health professionals somehow, and followed that will be the STEM professionals, which are basically the technicians, electronic, all these kind of guys, tech lot. But the most will be to the ones who are functioning in the physical domain. So truck drivers, pilots, all of them will be impacted. The entire airplane will be pretty much ChatGPT running on its own. So doesn't need a lot of the things that we have. So there were earlier signs that something like this would happen. There was a crash that happened, and Nat Geo was showing a documentary. Sorry, a bit deviating from the AI path, but there were always some amount of AI embedded in the airplanes to control crashes.
Okay.
So what happened is that there was a long distance flight, and the pilot actually leaves his kid in the pilot's seat and goes for maybe to the washroom or whatever. He comes back, his own son, and the plane was running on autopilot at that time. So he said, "Well, what is he going to do?" So he plays with the stick a little bit, and they show that after 10 minutes, the plane goes out of control, and the pilot is there. He tries to rescue the plane, but still goes into the water, and everybody dies. They simulated it afterwards, and they said what happened is when the kid was playing with the stick, the autopilot has a tolerance limit, after which it disengages, just like your car's system disengages. And nobody paid attention to the warning that the autopilot has disengaged. The plane went into a stall because the kid was playing with it. The pilot should have left the controller stick, because the complexity of the fall was too much for his brain to figure out. The machine would have figured it out on its own. So they showed in the demonstration that if he had just let go of the joystick, the plane would have stabilized itself on its own. He just let it be. But so it has happened already in the past. It's just that different things haven't come together yet. So it will take those 5 years to come there, and hopefully we'll try to be as prepared as possible. It affects things like like my child is now picking his bachelor's degree. Which one should he do? Which one will ChatGPT not attack?
It's difficult because like I've got young kids, right? I've got 3-year-olds. So I try to imagine what kind of world they'd be growing into by the time they turn 30. You can't imagine.
It's very difficult.
Jobs that are not even existent at this point will come and go and become redundant even before my daughter gets to college.
Yes, it's very much possible. Definitely.
It's insane.
Like my father used to say that electronics is basically the thing to do. What is this computer with the blue and red lights are going to do? This blinking lights. Because in his generation, electronics was very important. The planes and theirs used to come through. That's basically where the revolution happened. The washing machines came. In our case, this whole AI revolution is coming, and the machines initially started coding and all that kind of stuff. You remember my first computer actually used a tape drive to run the code into the ZX Spectrum computer. So this is before the 286.
Wow.
So his age saw that stuff running. Our age saw this stuff running. But eventually, I think it should settle down in a more benign fashion in terms of automation and some sort of a neural link with us. That's as far as we can peer.
One thing I'm hopeful that AI will help us to figure out is the concept of peace in the world. I say that because I try to read and grasp a lot of history as much as I can, world history, and see how in the past 100, 200, 500 years, humanity has evolved to the way it is, right? What I found is that the basic problem that we keep running into as humanity is that we keep forgetting what has happened in the past.
And we do it again.
And we end up doing it again. And that is a consequence of our limited life in this world.
Sure.
Because every generation is only occupying this world for a limited amount of time, whatever has happened 5 generations ago becomes completely irrelevant or unconsequential to us. In the same way, anything that might happen or any investment that you make that might pay a dividend 5 generations in the future becomes irrelevant or unimaginable to us.
It's the way our brains are.
It's the way our brains are worked, and that is our biological limitation, right? Now you bring AI into this. Once you bring AI into decision making for governments, for the UN, for a global world order, this is going to be a system that has the ability to reach as further back into the past for information, and compute as further ahead into the future as you can imagine.
Basically perfect knowledge.
Basically, omnipotence is the right word.
It's forever alive.
Yeah, it will have omnipotence. In that way, I hope that AI will help humanity guide itself onto a path where that AI could hold our hand and say, no, you have to make these decisions that are going to pay you much greater benefit in 5 generations time. So that is something that I'm hopeful for.
The scary part is then if the machine makes a mistake, like ChatGPT 4 also still makes mistakes. We do it as well, but the machine also does. Who will come to override that machine then? Because you would have given control to the machine.
This is a very famous philosophical puzzle. Again, it was the concept. I forget who was the one who synthesized this. It was the concept of the watchman. Have you heard that one?
Watchman.
Watchman. So in ancient Greek philosophy, there was a concept of ethereal watchmen who watch over the cosmos.
Okay.
Right. Just like the concept of God or the concept of Allah or the concept of any deity in any religion, that there is an omnipresent being who watches over humanity and dictates how things happen. The puzzle then that becomes, and this is a very famous quote of it, that who watches the watchman?
Yep. So if you make AI the watchman,
who watches the watchman?
You've lost control, and now the machine, if it makes a mistake, what if it decides one morning, like you said in the beginning, if it goes in the Terminator line? You're in big trouble then, because it has control over everything.
The scariest part is if SkyNet comes alive, and if SkyNet decides to exterminate us, we wouldn't even see it coming.
Yeah, it's quite true.
We would not even see it coming. By the point we actually realize what is happening, it will already be too late for us.
It's very possible. And there are so many less destructive ways of killing human beings than actually firing those rockets in the air, because it actually makes a mess of things.
Yeah, turn off the Wi-Fi in every home.
That would be
for 24 hours.
That's how I call my kids. I shut the router down.
Shut the router down for 24 hours. Everybody's going to kill themselves.
They're running around the house.
Yeah.
Oh, daddy, where you are? The internet is not. So yeah, that's one way. So
yeah, interesting. I feel that this is a conversation that has, again, like AI, it has no end, and it is the philosophical aspects of it are something that have to be debated endlessly, because there is no clear answer at this point. I'll come back to your personal journey. So with the work that you're doing, one portion of our program is that I want this platform to be one that is instructive to the younger lot that is coming into Australia, a lot of younger people. Like you said, STEM is going to be the biggest one of the top professions, beneficiaries of this, right? If anybody comes and asks you, a younger version of yourself comes up and asks that, okay, I'm planning to get some specialized education in this field, what are the target areas that you would say that, because AI and IT and neural networks, that again, it's a very broad field now. So if you really want to specialize in something, what are those few fields that you would suggest that you could go into, and what would the pathway for that look like?
I would suggest that traditional degrees like just computer science or just electronics, or even now, like for example, you have data science available. You open up those degrees and you look a bit under the covers, see what courses they're offering. And you'll probably need a mixture of electronics, because that's how robotics works. You'll also need a bit of computer science, because that's how the coding side of AI works. And no, you can't snub your nose at the code and say, I will not write some code and I'll still be, I'll be a really good data scientist or robotics expert or AI expert. You won't be. So you have to let go of that stigma that, coding is for lower level people. I have seen a lot of people try that out. Doesn't really pan out for you. The other part is that you need to develop some business understanding. So try to add an MBA on top of that education. So you can't do MBA along with your bachelor's. So you obviously have to work a little bit, then do your MBA. So like for example, right now, some universities are offering computer engineering degrees. So they add both the electronics side and the computer science side in one degree. Otherwise, you could do a double bachelor's, 2 majors. And that way you can mix the electronic side with the computer science side. And don't forget to add the data science portions, like statistics in the middle. Because if you have zero statistics experience, you'll have a really hard time figuring out what all this is going on with data science. So it's not just pure computer science. It's not just pure electronics. It's not just doing data science, which is basically statistics alone. You'll have to go across 3-4 different fields. So it's a broad understanding. So that is important because Elon also talks about this in almost all of his talks, or at least I've heard him 2-3 times now.
Yeah.
That I used to do. I made that company for
PayPal.
I made the rocket business. I made this business. I actually went across 10, 20 different fields. I did this job, then I did this job. So my knowledge spans multiple fields.
Yes.
So that's why I can actually come up with all these ideas.
Yes.
So that's what I would suggest for future generations also.
Try to diversify as much as you can.
Yeah. And I'm an exact example of this. Like I said at the beginning, I was doing computer graphics, then I was doing SAP, then I was doing coding again, then I was doing, so move around. Don't marry yourself to one corner because AI might come for that corner and then you will be really stuck.
I think the age of specialization is dead. Yeah. The age of generalization and the age of conventional knowledge and conventional degrees is dead.
Pretty much.
Because now you see that people who are already graduated with like 10-15 years of career behind them, even they would want to upskill themselves. And when you upskill yourself, where are you going to go to? You're going to go to online courses or online certifications to upskill yourself. So I think I personally think that university degrees, conventional degrees that box you into one particular field, I think that is fast becoming redundant, and within the next 10 years it's pretty much going to die away.
If you look at what Microsoft, Amazon, this lot is doing with the university degrees, they've already tossed it out of the window.
Exactly.
They basically say these are our 3 certifications. Pass one of them, we'll give you a degree. We'll give you a job.
Exactly.
Rest of the drama we don't care about. We'll do the behavioral scanning and check that you are not a troublemaker and all that kind of business. But the rest of it we don't care.
Yeah.
Like for example, the first 1 year of university, they teach you stuff how materials are deformed and this, like we did in our engineering. Nobody today cares what the tensile limiter is of a piece of steel.
Yeah.
Why are you teaching them this knowledge?
Yeah.
So it is generic, but it is generic to the point where we don't
really use it anymore.
Yeah. So try to be a jack of all trades, but the ace of a few. That's basically been my mantra. It's worked out pretty well for me, right? So I know a million different things from a million different sources, and I can also deep dive at different points.
Yeah.
So don't just scan the surface all the time. That also is problematic.
Yeah. Lifelong learning. That is
every day.
That is what is
every day. One thing that somebody came up interesting was related to this topic. Said don't make knowledge gaining as a infotainment. There's a difference between infotainment and actual knowledge. That when you begin, for example, a new space, properly explore it, learn about it, or at least keep some bookmark that you got up till here, and hopefully in future you'll continue. Don't just take a little spit there, a little spit there.
Don't flirt around with it. Don't flirt around with it. Marry it.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. Because they say the little bit of knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge.
Exactly.
Because you come with the wrong conclusion because I saw in a snapshot a little bit there, and I made a wrong assumption about this. You'll actually become more confused. I've seen some people in managerial positions.
Yeah.
Oh, that must be that, and conclusion is already drawn, and the wrong conclusion is completely drawn. And now it's difficult to hold them back. No, boss, no, that's not what it was. So yeah, while I say broad, please try to understand that space and then move on. Don't just scan the surface and in the morning you're just flipping through, half asleep and half this, and not really understanding what exactly is going on. That's more hurtful than actually beneficial.
Right. Again, this has been a very engaging conversation. Adeel bhai, thank you so much for being here. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. To try and get you back on sometime when GPT-7 is released or something. we'll debate that sometime. One last question that I always ask all my guests is, throughout your life, with all your experiences, with all your extensive knowledge, what is the one nugget of truth that life has taught you that you can pass on to other people?
I would say the biggest thing that I've ever learned is that never be arrogant. Okay, and that I'll personally say has been hard for me because I learned so many things. It was easy for me to be arrogant.
Yeah,
I got promoted very early in my life. Age of 27, I was head of the department.
Right.
I really didn't know what the hell was going on in my life.
Yeah.
So arrogance definitely comes in.
It gets to your head.
But I really would suggest for people, whether you're successful or not successful, don't let it bother you. And if you are successful, never let arrogance take over. Because you don't realize, even recently I saw somebody, I saw him a week before and I saw him a week after. There was a huge change in his attitude. Previously he would talk very nicely and he was very humble. Now next week I saw him.
Yeah.
Total different body posture.
Yeah.
Okay. What the difference was, he got a job in the middle. He was unemployed for a long time and he got a job in the middle. All of a sudden pride comes out. That actually blocks you from further learning.
Yeah.
It hurts other people around you, because you don't realize now when you will trample somebody else's feelings, their rights, and all this kind of stuff. Just be mindful of that.
Amazing. I think this is a very nice point on which we'd like to leave the audience. And until such time that AI becomes cognizant enough to press that subscribe button for you, you're going to have to do the little work and hit that subscribe button down below. Give us some feedback on this episode, whether you enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would love to have these kind of conversations again. Yeah, do give us some feedback, share this with people, and help us get to the subscriber amount that we need to continue this channel successfully. This has been In the Gap. I have been Hussain, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.